It's not about you, and it's not about us. It's about him. That could be just a little summary of the gospel that we just heard. Jesus says some pretty strong words about why he came: to serve and not to be served. But in many ways, it's the opposite message that our world often gives us. The world often says, do what it takes, whatever it takes, to get ahead in our professions, in our personal lives, whatever it may be. Do whatever you have to do, even if you got to step on other people. Do whatever you got to do to get ahead. Jesus says there's a better way. Our culture also often says that if it feels good, do it. Jesus says there's a different way. Our society, our culture often says that the things that are most highly to be valued and praised are power, authority, wealth, and prestige. Jesus offers a different way. He says whoever wishes to be first will be the servant. He says that he came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. We are reminded of that anytime we look at a cross, anytime we look at a crucifix in our homes, around our necks, in our church. What do we see? We see Jesus giving, and not just kind of. Look at a crucifix and you see Jesus giving everything, a total gift of self. The opposite of what the world often tells us. This is what we mean when we talk about living a life of stewardship. It's a practical way to follow the commands of Jesus, to live a life of service. That people would say about us, as they said about Jesus, that we came not to be served, but to serve, to give our lives, not for the salvation of the world, but rather in response to the great goodness that God has shown to us. That's what we call stewardship. To be a good steward is to take care of that which has been given to us. A life of stewardship. We live that out in a practical way in this parish, where every year we have what we call our annual stewardship renewal. We introduced it a little bit last week. We'll talk about it a little more this week. And next week, we're going to have our Commitment Sunday, where we're asking everyone in the parish to bring to Mass their commitment cards, specific commitments in 3 areas: time and talent and in treasure. I just want to break those each down a little bit, because they are a very practical and specific way that you and I can live the life of a disciple, following Jesus Christ, serving as he served. So we start with the area of time. Time really is our most precious commodity. We don't have enough of it. There are so many things pulling us in so many different directions. But also, if we're honest with ourselves, so often when we talk about our time, a life of prayer, a life with God, is oftentimes relegated to the end of the line. That's certainly been true in my life over the years. Even as a priest, there's been times when I think, okay, here's all these 14 things to accomplish today, these particular meetings, these phone calls, and this and this and this. And I'll just kind of get to the prayer when I can get to it. But a life of stewardship in terms of our time follows a different path. That our life with God comes first. Our prayer comes first. And all of the other things come after it. I doubt I'm the only person in the church who's had that issue, where we relegate God to the end. If there's time at the end of the day, I'll see what I can fit in. A life of stewardship, a life of discipleship calls us to put God first, to put Jesus at the center. And that's in terms of our prayer. But that's also in terms of those who are most important to us, to our own families. Are we spending the time with our families that our families need and deserve? Again, easier said than done. I know it's not easy when we're often pulled in so many different directions. That's the stewardship of time. In terms of talent, each one of us has been given specific gifts. Now, we may not know exactly what those gifts are. Maybe we're still trying to figure out, okay, what is the Lord calling me to do? But you, no matter your age, no matter where you've been, no matter how soon you've arrived here at the parish, each of us has very specific talents and gifts that we can offer to this parish and to this community. For many of us, that's simply prayer. Maybe your talent is that you have some time on your hands. Maybe your talent is that you can intercede for the families of this church, for the ministries of this church, for the poor, for those who have fallen away from their Catholic faith, for those who are interested in learning more about the faith. What we need for in so many ways are people to intercede and to pray. Maybe that's the gift you've been given. Maybe it's standing up here and lecturing. Maybe it's ushering. Maybe it's greeting. Maybe it's serving Mass. There are so many ways in which a person can serve in the life of the parish. So those of you who are registered parishioners, you received a mailing and it had a little booklet in it. It looks like this, English and Spanish, and it's got all the different ministries of the parish. I'd encourage you to spend some time with it. Look through it. See what pops out. Maybe there's something that the parish needs that your particular talents can match up with. But it's also true of the larger needs of the community. What are the specific needs in our area? I know some of you are visiting here today. You've come from other places, maybe just seeing family. We welcome you. We're glad you're here. What are the things that your parish needs from wherever you're from? What gifts do you bring to make your parish a better place? And then finally, we have the stewardship of treasure. I think so often there's a misconception around stewardship that it's just about money. There's a reason we put it third. Now, we need money to make this place go, to have a staff, to have all of the activities. We have a big and beautiful church, and it costs some money to run it. But if we look at our lives and we say, gosh, what has the Lord given to me? God has given me everything. And so we spend our lives trying to give that back as much as we can in time and talent and with treasure. And so the way that we propose to each person, to each family, is to work towards the biblical tithe of 10% of one's income. Now, that may not be immediately doable, but something to work towards. And we have a little recommended breakdown. 5% to the parish, 1% to the Diocese of Tulsa for the important work going on around us, and then 4% to all of the wonderful other charities that are around us. So we encourage you to pray about that and make those commitments known when you come to Mass next week to bring your commitment card. This life of stewardship ultimately is a life of generosity, and it's lived out in 100 different ways. For many people, that's going to be a lot of involvement here in the parish. Great. For some of you, though, it's what I might call a quiet stewardship. I had a conversation just a few weeks ago with a good friend from college. She lives in another diocese, and they were doing kind of something similar at her parish. And she called me, and she kind of came away from it. She was kind of like offended. Because in their parish, they were talking about it as if you're not super involved in the parish, if you're not doing this and this and this, if you're not involved in 14 things, then you're not doing it right. Well, she says, I have 6 kids. One of them is special needs and requires a lot of time and attention. I can't be super involved at the parish. I just simply can't. And I would call that kind of a quiet stewardship. So whether it's maybe you're at home with kids, I know so many of you are caring for another person, maybe an elderly parent, maybe a spouse, maybe a sick child, maybe a child with special needs that requires a lot of your time and your talent and your treasure. There's this quiet stewardship that, again, so many of you are living that may not be able to be put down on paper. I just want to acknowledge you, and I want to encourage you that what you're doing is living the life that the Lord is calling you to live, taking care of someone who needs it the most. And so what does a life of stewardship look like for you? I say this to moms and dads, to those of you who are retired. I say this to the teenagers and to the kids. This is a life that all of us are called to. Jesus says, I came not to be served, but to serve, to give my life as a ransom for many. You and I are called to that way of life, to give of ourselves. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Selfish people aren't happy. When you think about the happiest people you know, they're living lives outside of themselves in generosity, giving of themselves in a whole variety of ways. So whatever that looks like for you, I encourage you to pray about it so that in the stewardship way of life, that our lives are centered on Christ, who came not to serve but to be served, that we give our lives, away. It's not about you. It's not about us. It's about Him. This stewardship way of life is a life of service, a life of dedication, not for ourselves, but for the increase and the growth of the church. Whatever that looks like for you, we ask you to bring those cards next week to make it known, and to God be the glory. Amen.